Fantasy stories have always been about showing the wonder of our world, but from a different view. They allow us to reflect on what makes our world so beautiful or so terrifying. These stories about characters going on epic journeys, discovering who they are and what's most important to them, makes this genre of storytelling my absolute favorite. I especially love the magic systems that get introduced into these shows. The magic found in these stories reflect or expand upon a problem that's facing our world. They allow us to critique the world we live in a poetic and fun way, and I think that's what Witch Hat Atelier does in spades. While watching this anime, I was left with two questions. Was Witch Hat Atelier's magic system hard or soft magic? And even more strangely, who can create? Looking through the show, these two questions get answered, with the second one being way more poignant in our time. So, let me give some context to this story. The manga was written by Kamome Shirahama, with the anime being produced by Bug Films. Shirahama's childhood was filled with fantasy, as she explains that when she was growing up, huge fantasy movies based on stories like Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings trilogy influenced her fantasy style of writing, along with shoujo mangakas like Moto Hagio and Ryoko Yamagishi. Once she grew up and entered the industry, Shirahama started out as an illustrator, but wanting to tell more stories, she moved on to creating manga. After completing a one-shot, Watashi no Kuro-chan, and a 3-volume manga called Enali and Devali, she started working on her next story. While drawing with some friends, a thought occurred to her. When she draws, to her it seemed normal, but to strangers it was magic. This gave her an idea for another story. Using this feeling as a base, she took her childhood fascination with fantasy and her background as an illustrator to create a new manga. Shirahama understood the current place that fantasy manga was in, stating that current fantasy stories are about some form of reincarnation or magic taking place in the modern era. So instead of following that path, she instead used her drawings to invoke that of old fairy tales and paintings from the Renaissance era, deliberately calling back to those old bedtime stories. Using artistic techniques from the 14th and 16th centuries, she allowed her style of art to stand out from other types of fantasy manga. All of this culminated in the creation of her newest manga, which was released on July 22nd, 2016, titled Witch Hat Atelier. The world of Witch Hat Atelier is filled with magic. Its users are known as witches. This story follows Coco, who hopes to become a witch, but we learn that in this world, only a chosen few can learn magic. No matter how much a person yearns to create and use magic, it's impossible. That was Coco's worldview, but all that changed when she met Kifri the witch. Through Kifri, she learned the truth of magic. Originally, the peninsula was filled with everyone learning how to create and use magic. No matter who you were or what part of society you lived in, you could produce spells. But still, there were those who used this power for harm. They used magic to hurt instead of help. To fight against this, a group of magic users, later known as the Pointed Caps, gathered together and erased the memory of magic from everyone. This was eventually known as the Day of the Pact. After this, the Society of Pointed Caps closed off the magical world. Only those who grew up within this secret society were granted permission to use this art. Those magic spells that could harm others were made forbidden, and the use of magic on people explicitly banned. Only tools could now be enhanced or enchanted with magic, and this laid the stable yet secretive groundwork for the magical society that lives in this world. Now, this brings me to my first question. What type of magic does this world use? Each spell is created not with wands and staves like the usual fantasy affair, but instead with pens and ink. Albeit special conjuring ink, made from fictional silverwood trees, but still just ink. This means that pretty much anyone with these tools can create magic. There isn't some sort of special barrier like in many other stories, such as needing to have a special inclination or gift for magic. If you wanted to make magic, you could. In fact, Coco isn't even a part of this magical society. She's an outsider with a passion for magic. Now, the creation of spells is where things can get a bit more complicated, but still the basics are fairly simple. Pretty much every spell is created within an enclosed circle. The symbols at the center are known as sigils and are used to show what element the spell is going to be used or affect. So if we were creating a fire-based spell, we would need to draw out the fire sigil. Now, to draw out more complicated spells, the witches use certain signs or keystones, which allow for the structure of the spell to form, like creating a column of fire or floating in the air with a levitation sign. With the ban on magic used to augment the body, this meant that magic is only used in conjunction with items, meaning that the creativity not only comes with how you create the spell, but with how the spell will affect the object. These basic rules allow for a complex yet structured system of magic. As more spells get revealed, the more complex they can become, but are still built on the same solid foundation. In an essay by sci-fi author Brandon Sanderson about his first law of magic, he states states that the author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. Basically, the more defined the rules of your magic system are, the more satisfying a conflict can be resolved. Now, this doesn't mean that stories with unclear or purposefully vague magic systems have bad or unsatisfying endings, but many times stories might use magic as a sort of deus ex machina, where things get solved like a get out of jail free card instead of a tool that's being used to solve a problem. Stories that might prefer this style of magic usually would want to express the mystical side of their world. It makes magic seem more pervasive and affect everything that it touches. You can see this type of magic in one of Shirahama's favorite stories, The Lord of the Rings. In J.R.R. Tolkien's high fantasy epic novel, the magic of Middle-earth isn't really explained. There isn't really an explicit system that explains how the magic works. But since many of the characters in the stories use magic more sparingly, there's a certain aura and a feel to it. This allows the mysteriousness of the magic to act as an aid, allowing characters like Gandalf the Grey to appear grander and more unknown. This system contrasts with hard magic, where there are a set of limits or rules that can't be violated. When we know the rules, the protagonists can exploit them to their own advantage. Stories that use these types of magic systems rely on the character's wit and experience to solve their conflicts. In my opinion, these can allow for characters to express their own unique identity when trying to solve their problems. Instead of magic being a way to solve problems by itself, it's used as a tool that can be applied in an imaginative way. Hard systems allow for readers to try and solve the problems that the protagonist might face in their own ways. If you know the rules, you can play the game. You might start trying to put the puzzle pieces in place with how you could use the magic to solve the problem. This makes the magic much more personal and to a certain extent realistic. Instead of viewing the problem from afar, where the magic will eventually figure itself out, you need to actually utilize it in a clever way to solve the problem. To me, a soft magic system is much more reactive compared to a hard magic system being more proactive. Now, which side does Witch Hat Atelier's magic system move towards? Well, I think that it's a mix of the two, but still leans heavily towards hard magic. There are hard rules and needed tools that allow for a witch to create magic, yet the rules are usually added when needed. Whenever there's a need for a certain spell, new sigils, or keystones, they get introduced. The laws of the world are never violated, but are instead expanded upon. This makes it so that the hard system is never explicitly broken, but is malleable enough to allow for creative changes. When there's a new problem that arises, the characters need to come up with a plausible yet interesting solution. Now let's talk about the second question, who can create, and how it connects to the magic found in Witch Hat Atelier. I believe that this system holds a mirror to our own world and answers this question. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, I think that the magic that takes place in Witch Hat Atelier connects to the idea that anyone can create. This magic system is much more open than many other systems. This world isn't a place where only a certain type of person can use magic. If you're able to learn enough about it, get your hands on the right materials, you too can create magic, just like in our own world. The idea to create isn't inherent to certain people. While there are those who might be gifted, it doesn't deny another person's ability to express themselves. Coco isn't gifted in magic, unlike her peers at Keyfree's Atelier who've lived in this world all their lives, yet she still tries to learn as much as she can and grow as a witch as much as she could. Even the people who are a part of this society get affected by this idea. Throughout the story, we start to learn about the brimmed caps and how they aren't the most accessible to those with disabilities. They look down on them and undervalue the skills that they might bring to the table. The idea that anyone can create is shown when we learn about Tarta and his disease, Silverwash. Tarta is a young witch who helps his grandfather run a magic supply store, one that Coco buys her wand from. Similar to Coco's love for magic, Tarta loves to learn, especially in magical medicine making. The only problem is that his disease means that he can only see a silver world. This means that his impaired senses of sight prevent him from accurately drawing spells, especially those needing specially colored inks, along with not being able to accurately create medicines using colored herbs. How does he get over this hurdle? Well, we see him jump over it when Coco gets sick. Then Keyfree takes her to the hospital. While there, Keyfree and the other witches at the hospital get called away to take care of an urgent disaster taking place. Coco starts to deteriorate as her sickness starts to rapidly weaken her, and with Tarta being the only one who's able to create the medicine needed for Coco, he can't. All the powders and liquids all look the exact same. they all look silver. While sick, Coco comes up with a spell that can reconstitute matter from one state to a previous state, but with her hands being too shaky, it's all up to Tarda. Using the skills that he gained working at his grandfather's shop, as well as his gift for medicinal magic, Tarta was able to aid in healing Coco. While the idea to come up with the spell was originally from Coco, the idea to use it in conjunction with Tarta's knowledge was all up to himself. The joy of creating and of helping others allowed Tarta to once again believe in his skills and to believe in himself. This story exemplifies the joy of creation, Coco's love for a world that she originally didn't belong to, or Tarta's ability to help those even when he thought all was lost. It shows us that anyone can create something truly magical, no matter who they are. With the use of some paper, a pen, and some ink, they're able to create magic. It's not too different from our world, so go out there and make some magic. After all, anyone can create. I know this video is a bit different from what I usually make, but please be sure to subscribe. Also, let me know what type of shows I should make a video on next. And as always, thanks for watching.